Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dennis Wieboldt, and I'm a junior at Boston College. I'm truly humbled to be co-moderating tonight's discussion on security and service in the 21st century as chairman of the Boston Intercollegiate Government. For those who have not joined our previous events, the Boston Intercollegiate Government is a nonpartisan coalition of student governments in the greater Boston area that advocates for student interest on local, state, and federal levels. Founded nearly 2 decades ago and recognized in 2003 by the city of Boston as an effective means of advocacy for college-age students, BIG now represents over 60,000 undergraduates and continues to expand its footprint through events with policymakers and community leaders from around the country. Since reorganizing last spring, BIG has launched numerous initiatives around civic engagement, mental health, opioid awareness, and service to the GBA community. We've also had the privilege of hosting virtual conversations with former Massachusetts Governor Dukakis, Speaker of the House DeLeo, various Boston City councilors, US Senator Ed Markey, Republican Senate candidate O'Connor, among others. To this list of prominent policymakers, we are pleased to add tonight's speakers, two distinguished service members who have demonstrated a continued commitment to the support and defense of the United States at home and abroad. Before I introduce tonight's speakers, I would like to remind everyone that tonight's event is being recorded, and at the conclusion of the event, the recording will be posted on all of our social media pages at bigstugovt. Without further ado, it is my distinct honor to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Craig Quigley. Craig Quigley serves as the Executive Director of the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance, a public-private partnership dedicated to attracting, retaining, and growing federal facilities in the region. A career naval officer, Quigley served 27 years on active duty, achieving the rank of Rear Admiral and serving as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs at the Pentagon. After retiring from the Navy, Quigley accepted a position as Vice President of Communications and Public Affairs at Lockheed Martin, leading a 30-person communications team across 8 states for a $3.5 billion operating company. Following Lockheed Martin, Quigley returned to federal government service as the Director of Communications for the U.S. Joint Forces Command in Hampton Roads, Virginia, during a time of great transition for the organization. Quigley is a 1975 distinguished graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland, and served as president of his class. A native of Winthrop, Iowa, he is an active public speaker and believes in the value of mentoring juniors and developing teamwork to accomplish difficult objectives. He's been listed in the Who's Who in American high schools and Who's Who in American colleges and universities, and was selected as Outstanding Young Man of America in 1980. He serves as a member of the Communications Committee of the U.S. Naval Academy Alumni Association Board of Trustees, and also serves as chair of the Board of Trustees at Stratford University. As a member of the Board of Directors of the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce and the Board of Directors of the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce. Quigley assumed his current duties in September 2010. Mr. Quigley, welcome.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that kind introduction. Thanks also to Hannah Nivar for reaching out to me in the first place and answering, about 1 million questions before tonight. Good evening, BIG. I just love that acronym. It's a pleasure to join you virtually tonight. Unfortunately, this has become the new normal for the past many months, and I think we're worse off because of it. But it's better than no interaction at all, so here we go. So I'd like to speak with you about leadership and service tonight, and then hear what's on your mind by taking your questions. So I'd like to start off by doing something a little unconventional here. So for starters, I'd like everybody to turn their cameras on. I don't care what you look like at the moment.
I support that. I like that idea.
There we go. Good. Ooh, did I see somebody named Sarah Quigley? How about that, Sarah? Maybe we're distant cousins. Who knows?
I think she's a bit shy, but that's my high school friend.
Okay. Well, by a show of hands, how many of you have served or are serving in the military? Okay. How about firefighters? Okay, medical profession. How about educators? The clergy? Local, state, or federal civil service? And I know you're still mostly young, but you never know till you ask. How about elected office, even in your schools? Student council, class president, something like that. Okay, good. Just look at all the hands that went up on one or the other of those categories. And there are many more ways that people can serve their fellow citizens. So why do you do this? Why don't you just go for the gold and make it all about the money? Would it be nice to accumulate great wealth by the time you're 40, let's say, and then spend the rest of your days on the beach in Aruba? No, it really wouldn't. And those of you whose hands were in the air know better already. You have grown to understand that serving a cause greater than yourself is what gives life meaning and purpose. Doing work that matters brings a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment that great wealth can never bring. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning with a spring in our step and anticipation for the day. And when we lay our heads on the pillow at night, we may do so exhausted, but with a wonderful feeling that we did something today that made a difference in people's lives, in the safety of our community, in the protection of our nation, in the condition of our world. You may remember in early 2010, Haiti suffered a terrible earthquake. And Haiti is a country that is not blessed with a lot of natural resources. It is a country that is crushingly poor. It has a history of very corrupt and very inefficient government. And it just doesn't have a lot going for it on a good day. It has been whacked by many hurricanes over the years, but there's never been a history of seismic activity on Haiti until February of 2010, when a very powerful earthquake did tremendous damage to that terrible, poor country. So the ability to go down and make a difference in people's lives, that what little they had, they lost in the blink of an eye, was a wonderful opportunity. I served down there for about 6 weeks after the earthquake hit Haiti. It wasn't all a military show, but it was largely a military show. You also had USAID, you had the State Department, certainly. You had lots of nonprofits and non-governmental organizations down there because the people of Haiti had nothing. They had no power, no running water, no operable sewer. Their homes had largely been destroyed. The homes that were still standing were unstable and unsafe. Their government had been decimated. At least 35% of their elected leaders were killed in the earthquake itself. So I'm starting off with a government that isn't all that great, and then I lose 35% of it instantly in the earthquake itself. So when you get down there and you see how people who have nothing look to you to try to make a difference, you talk about doing work that matters and bringing a sense of satisfaction. So we had very long days of work down there, but the look in the eyes of the people that you were able to bring some sense of relief to during the course of those days and weeks down there, I will remember it to my for the rest of my life. And I was not alone. Every American and every other nationality, Canada had a significant presence down there. Every other nation that rose to the occasion and brought assistance and aid to the people of Haiti went away as having lived richer lives or having done something for people that had been wiped out and had no other way to help themselves. The point, ladies and gentlemen, is get involved. The world is run by those that show up. I'd like to shift now to some principles of leadership. First, know the difference between leadership and management. Leadership involves people. Management involves stuff. Both are important, but they are very different. Management means managing a budget, managing a capital project, managing infrastructure. That's important, but people are what get that done, and that is leadership, not management. Next, communicate often and clearly. Walk around, talk with the little guy, listen to what they have to say. Tweets, emails, and texts are not leadership. They have their place, but they are no substitute for your people seeing you face to face, even with a mask. Be fair and equitable. Your people see everything that you say and do. And if you start playing favorites, they'll know it in a heartbeat, and you've just created a morale problem. Set standards and be the first to live by them. They apply to you too. Be nimble. Circumstances and priorities will change. Leadership qualities that serve people well during the Cold War years, as an example, where we faced a monolithic foe, are very different from the many challenges of the fragmented world of 2020 and beyond. Unfortunately, don't expect this to change anytime soon. Your people will look to you to help them sort this out and think this through in this crazy world. For those of you in uniform or about to be strictly apolitical. You will swear an oath to the Constitution, not a person or a party. You will make mistakes, admit those mistakes, learn from them, and move on. A couple other points I'd like to share that I picked up over the years. Do one thing at a time. Give each experience all your attention. Try to resist being distracted by other sights and sounds, other thoughts and tasks. And when you are, try to get your mind back to what you're doing. I fully realize this advice goes counter to everything you may hear in this age of multitasking and texting while driving, but I simply don't believe that our minds are truly capable of doing this very well. A few geniuses maybe can succeed this way. Most of us can't and shouldn't try. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't learn many things on many subjects. That's very useful. My warning is against distraction, whether you invite it or just let it happen. Focus and intensity are the way to go. Next, have as your goal to perform at the very best of your abilities all the time. Live your life with a passion for excellence, and you will impact and shape the world. I don't care what career path you choose, but whatever it may be, do it better than anybody else around you, and do it just as well when nobody is looking. Finally, superstars all have limitations. Teams can accomplish anything. It's amazing what can be accomplished if nobody cares who gets the credit. By all means, develop your skills, your personal skills, to the best of your ability, but learn to appreciate the incredible power of teamwork. Many of you here today have already learned this great truth, and those of you that haven't so far surely will do so. So thank you and good luck, and I'll be glad to field your questions. Any topic is fair game.
Thank you so much for sharing your insight from your experiences and good wisdom that I think everyone can definitely benefit from at this time. In our chat for questions, I will put a form that everyone can submit their questions for either speaker throughout the course of the event. Those for Lieutenant Colonel Luecke will be saved for later when he is speaking.
Hi, Colonel, by the way.
How you doing, sir?
Good.
All right, I will begin for about 15 minutes with some prepared questions to get us going, and we will be monitoring the form regularly.
Okay.
Our first one happens to center around COVID, since that's so prevalent within our society at this moment. So base
I've
realignment,
noticed.
yeah, just a bit. So starting with base realignment and closure, this may be considered once we reach a post-COVID society. Would you be able to speak more about base realignment and closure, what it's utilized for, and what that would look like at this time?
Sure. Base realignment and closure is used to come up with a disciplined analytics-based process by which each of the services takes a look at their basing structure and tries to figure out if they still need all of the installations that they have. And if not, then how can they move the players on the chessboard to better align, make it more efficient, more effective, and save some money while doing it. So I believe we haven't had a round of base realignment and closure, or BRAC as it's known, since 2005. So that's a long time. And that's after a period of years where we had gone for a round of BRAC every 3 to 5 years for a long time. But we haven't had one in 15 years. And after repeated requests by the Defense Department to the Congress for permission to have one, but the Congress has said no repeatedly to that. I believe that in a very ironic way, the budget pressures of the off-budget spending for COVID-19 will force a reckoning from a budget perspective, not so much the efficiencies or the appropriate alignment of things, but it's going to be about the dollars. If I have a limited amount of money and perhaps even a shrinking amount of money, then where can I save some money? And that is by perhaps closing some installations. So you may not even call it a BRAC, Hannah, and when the services get around to it, but it will be some sort of a thoughtful, deliberate process by which the services take a look at their shore infrastructure and make sure that they still like what they see. And if not, they'll start closing installations and consolidating assets at a smaller number of shore installations. So there's no direct correlation, you would think at first blush, between a pandemic and a BRAC. But in this case, it's the $2 or $3 trillion of off-budget spending that has been spent on CARES Act, the PPE purchases, and things like that. I'm not arguing those are not needed; they are. That was what saved our bacon several months ago as a country, I believe. But still, I got to pay for that somehow. So it's off-budget spending, but it's on the national debt. So at some point in time, I got to start paying down that debt, and this is the way to go about it.
Awesome, thank you. So in line with consolidation, going off of that, in your recent board meetings, the idea of a base of the future was discussed. Do you think consolidation might be a motivating factor for enhancing the bases that you have remaining?
Yes, I believe so. Back in the day, If I was a military installation, I established myself somewhere. I put a fence line around the base, and then I pretty much set up a separate world inside the fence line. I had my own grocery stores. I had my own retail outlets. I had my own gymnasiums. I had my own morale, welfare, and rec activities, my own housing for the military families. And sure, people went out into town, but I could be an enclave unto myself if I really wanted to be. That's an expensive way of doing business. If I'm going to go back to the American frontier West, that was a really necessary way of doing things, because when I established army forts in the frontier, there was literally nothing around me. So I needed to do that. I get it. Historically, that was the right way to go. But if I'm in the middle of a major metropolitan area that has movie theaters, um, 20 different grocery stores, retail outlets all over the place, do I really need all of these amenities inside the fence line that I'm paying for? And Craig's answer is, I don't think so. So the base of the future is going to see, you're still probably going to have that fence line for security purposes, but maybe I can move the fence line. Let's just make believe I'm an Air Force base. So I have fighter aircraft, I have hangars to house them, I have maintenance facilities to take care of them, I have weapons magazines to store the weapons. I really need to keep that stuff secure. So around those elements, I need to have security, and I do that perhaps with a fence and a security force and things of that sort. But if I can have my recreational activities, my family housing, my grocery stores, all of these non-mission essential items outside the fence line, or eliminate them completely and rely on the host community to provide those. One, I've saved a lot of money. Two, I develop a closer bond with the community that hosts my installation, because my airmen, in my example, are going out in town more often to shop at Target's grocery store or Wegmans or whatever the case may be. So I believe that is the base of the future. I also don't need to create my own electrical power, my own steam, my own, all of these things. I want to rely on the community to provide those. And I just purchase them as a service. And I save some money that way as well. I don't have to maintain them. I just purchase it as a service, and I buy it from the local utility, and I'm done. If something breaks, I call them up and said, "This is broken. Come fix it. It's yours. It's not mine anymore. It's theirs." So I think that's the base of the future, is a blending and a lowering of the fence line, if you will, with that bright line of demarcation between the military installation and the community that hosts it.
I'm really glad that you mentioned the community as well as the families that are usually on the base. So has COVID altered the way that your organization currently prioritizes their projects? So is there greater emphasis on military families and their safety over infrastructure resiliency? Or how has that dynamic been for you over the past few months?
No, not really. It has certainly altered our behavior. My deputy and I spent a lot more time in the seat of our car before the pandemic hit, going to meetings with either elected leaders or federal installation leaders, to sit down with them over a cup of coffee and say, "What's on your mind? Are there some issues that we might be able to help you with?" And maybe it's a local solution, maybe it's a state solution, maybe it's a federal solution, but we'll figure it out and we'll work with you to take that problem off the table. We can't do that anymore. We've been doing Zoom calls like this one and GoToMeeting and all of that for months now. We're just now starting to get back into very, very small face-to-face meetings. 3 of us, 4 of us, maybe in a room with face masks, socially distanced. So that's an improvement, I guess. I get it. It's necessary. I hate it, but it's necessary. But I think it's a step in the right direction. We won't really get there in so many different ways until a vaccine is widely available for the virus. And that's still going to be several months. So in the meantime, you just suck it up. The impact on families has been profound. You have a lot of, let's just assume for a starting argument that I have a household with 2 adults and some number of children. One of those adults is probably the military member, and probably that military member is going to leave the household during the workday to go to work. Could be at the flight line of that Air Force base or on a Navy ship or in an Army armor unit or whatever the case may be, but I'm not home. So my kids are home because I couldn't get, daycare's closed, school is virtual. I may be a working professional myself, whether I'm the husband or the wife. So I've got to balance my job, taking care of my kids, taking care of the household, and those are 3 full-time jobs that I'm doing all at once. Give me a break. Talk about stress. Now when that military member comes home from work, they've had a full day too, and they're tired. They walk in that front door, and the spouse that has stayed home all day wants to say, honey, you got it. Okay, you can have the kids because I've had them all day long and I've had it up to here with them. Well, what's that going to result into? That's going to result into a fight between the couple because they're both tired. And it's just additional stress now on that marriage. So this is not unique to the military lifestyle by any stretch, but I think it's exacerbated a little bit, particularly if a military member is deployed. So if I'm a sailor and I'm on a ship and honey, I'm leaving for 6 months, goodbye, you got it. You got it all. That's an awful lot of responsibility on a single adult to be both parents, educator, home provider, and oh, by the way, if you're working, you got to be a working professional as well. I don't know how in the world people do that. Now, make that even worse. Let's say I'm a single parent. I don't even have a spouse. I got to do it all every day. And that the pressure never ends. So that is a profound effect on military families and others, but particularly military families whose military member deploys for an extended period of time, thousands of miles away. I can't call them and say, I'm really having a crappy day. I need you to come home right now. Nope, can't do it. So you're just going to have to find a way to get that done. And that is just an incredibly stressful circumstance. Long answer to your question, but there's probably no group of people I have greater respect for right now in this whole pandemic than parents of young children.
No, a long answer, but definitely a packed question and it affected a lot of different people in many ways. So I appreciate your attention to those details. Now, transitioning a bit to look at a technological aspect of what you do, I'm going to provide a little bit of background for our audience members. So Hampton Road Military and Federal Facilities Alliance works regularly with NASA Langley Research Center. In the center, advancing technology, such as working on supersonic flight over populated areas or unmanned aerial systems, are taking place. So this will be the background for these next few questions. Mr. Quigley, do you believe that these advancements are close at hand and there are greater opportunities that lie ahead at this moment?
First, Hannah, if you want to save yourself some breath for future questions, you can call the organization Harumpha, which is what everybody in Hampton Roads calls it. A lot of people don't even know what the letters actually stand for. They know what we do, but they just know it as Harumpha. So I offer you that opportunity. The technological breakthroughs that NASA Langley and other organizations in Hampton Roads and around the country are that close to being a reality. When drones, as the common name for unmanned aerial systems, first became popularized about, I don't know, 6-8 years ago, maybe something like that, where they started to just multiply like crazy. I think they overwhelmed the technology, overwhelmed the policymakers. For instance, at the FAA, that is responsible for figuring out a policy as to how to safely fly things in the national airspace system. So up until that point, FAA had commercial airlines, United, Southwest, all that. I had charter flights. I had private aircraft. I had military aircraft. But they all had a person in the cockpit whose hand was on the controls. Now, all of a sudden, I have this humongous leap in technology where I truly, for the first time ever, have an ability to either fly autonomously or remotely. Pretty big flying machines in the national airspace system. And I can fly cargo. I can fly fire watch missions. I can fight forest fires. I can do all kinds of stuff. And it's changing by the month. And the FAA was caught, I think, a little unprepared for how quickly the technology was rapidly advancing. So they turned to some allies to help them figure this out. And one of them was NASA Langley here in Hampton Roads. So I need to figure out, so nobody's going to stop the drones from coming. They're coming. So figure it out. So you guys need to figure out a way to integrate all of these different flavors of flying machines in the same national airspace system, so I don't bump into each other and people die. And that is no small challenge. I think the vast majority of drone pilots want to be safe. They want to figure out a thoughtful, deliberate way that they can safely be up there with United Airlines and privately owned planes and all that. But you do have some rogue actors that don't want any rules. And that is a problem. That is a problem. But NASA Langley is working very closely with the FAA, with the airlines, with the military, with the National Pilots Association to figure out a set of rules so that all of these different flavors of aircraft can peacefully coexist, if you will, in the national airspace system. I'm very confident they'll get that done. And I'm also confident it will be a very near-term thing. So what's today? 2020. I believe that, say, by 2025, this is going to be a done deal. And we're going to consider it absolutely commonplace to look out the window of your commercial airliner as you're landing at BWI and see a drone and not get all shook up about it, because that's just the way it is. Supersonic flight is a different issue. Everybody's heard of sonic booms, right? And as soon as you break the sound barrier at a certain altitude, you make a lot of noise. You break windows and you scare people, and that's not a good thing. But if you can shape your lifting body, the wings, the entire airframe of a aircraft in such a manner that shock wave rolls off the airframe in a quieter, more controlled way, that the sound and intensity and power of that sonic boom goes way down. And if you could figure that out, so as you could fly supersonic over the United States or any other country for that matter, you would really speed up commerce around the world. Not only people, but cargo. I mean, you think Amazon and FedEx deliver stuff fast now. If you give them supersonic aircraft without sonic booms, you order something now at 7:38, you'll have it at 10 o'clock. I mean, it's going to be that fast. So I think we'll get there because the science is being responsive to a demand signal from commerce. There's one more element that's really important here, and that's the human psyche for particularly the unmanned aerial systems. So I could take off from a commercial airport right now with any number of models of drones, and I could very safely fly over residential areas and then land, and no one would be the wiser. But I think people at this moment would freak out if they realized that there were drones flying overhead, big ones, not these little quadcopters, but a big one that looks like a real airplane, and there's nobody in the cockpit. So I think there's going to be an emotional adjustment that people have to make to accept this technology as a part of their world as we move forward into 2020 and beyond. I think we'll get there. There's historical examples abound, transitioning from the horse to the automobile, and people were deathly against that. Oh, that's terrible. But guess what? Here we are. So we'll get there, but it will take an emotional adjustment by the population, not only of the United States, but of every country that will operate those over its residential areas. And someday there'll be an accident, just like there are accidents with manned aircraft. And that will be a tough moment. And then there'll be people say, there, see, I told you, we shouldn't have done that. We're just going to have to get past that and move on because the world isn't going to stop.
Thank you. Further, on the note of commerce, the Hampton Roads community is economically dependent on the military industry within the region. Do you ever receive backlash from members outside of this community that criticize your work solely as being an asset to the military industrial complex rather than for the benefit of not only your community, but the United States as a whole and our national security?
No. We have about 40% of our gross regional product is predicated on the military presence here. And that grows to about 44% if you include NASA, the Department of Energy's particle physics lab called Jefferson Lab, and the other non-military federal assets that are here. What I hear, Hannah, is from other cities outside of Virginia, other states outside of Virginia, who are jealous of what we have here because they realize the tremendous economic benefit that we enjoy by having them here in Hampton Roads. So nobody feels sorry for us. They're always just mildly ticked off at us because we have so much and they'd like some of it in their state. We're not willing to share.
Awesome, thank you. Still focusing in on the community, within past few years, the Hampton Roads community has been experiencing the dire effects of global climate change, seen in the devastation of sea level rise and intense flooding. What has Harumfa done to combat climate change and work with governmental entities to work towards a solution?
Our part of southeastern Virginia is the second most vulnerable part of the country to sea level rise, after only the New Orleans metro area. So number two is us. So that's a sobering realization that you've got to wrap your head around. The water is one of the things that makes this area such an attractive place to live. It's pretty. So people like the water for boating, for fishing, for recreational activities. Families come here to vacation because of the water. Deep water port, ice-free, year-round, huge economic engine. The Navy is here, the Coast Guard is here because of that water. But it's measurably rising. Everybody acknowledges the truthfulness of that, which is an improvement, by the way, over 5 or 6 years ago. If you had asked me that question in a public setting, let's say down here 5 or 6 years ago, you probably would have got a funny look because it wasn't a part of the conversation. And people will say, what are you talking about? But it has now become so well exposed as being an accurate thing that is happening to us all, that it is accepted as a reality. So that's no small thing all by itself. But thing two is so I'm the city of Norfolk, and I host the Norfolk Naval Station, which is the single largest naval base in the world. So I go through the city of Norfolk up to a point, and then I come to the perimeter of the Norfolk Naval Station. And then from that point on, I'm on Navy property. Well, the water doesn't care where that line of demarcation is. It's going to go where it wants to go. So I'm the city. I absolutely must work with the Navy, the Army Corps of Engineers, NOAA, other federal and local entities to figure out a common solution for this. It has two curses that make it very, very difficult. One, it's not a today problem. If I don't take action today, I'm not going to be underwater tomorrow. Okay, this is a really slow process that will take decades to manifest itself. So we know it's coming, it's measurable, I can see it, I can measure it, it's real, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. The second curse is it's going to really be expensive. So each of those feeds off each other. Because it's going to be expensive, I can put it off. And I can put it off because it's going to be expensive. So we've studied it, and that's appropriate and necessary. But we've got some good studies now that say these are the steps that need to be taken to mitigate the effect of sea level rise on Hampton roads. But nobody's reaching for their checkbook yet because the answer is in the billions of dollars. Who's going to pay for that? I can't afford it locally. I can't afford it only in this state. If I'm in Iowa, where I grew up, I don't want to help with my taxes and help save Virginia. I don't care about Virginia. That's their problem. Let them pay for it. So we haven't figured that out yet as far as a mechanism to pay for this and to inject a sense of urgency into the solutions that are starting to manifest themselves. It's a variety of things. It's no one size fits all. It's not just build a big seawall around everything. It's the restoration of wetlands, dunes, floodgates, tidal gates, things of that sort, changing building codes so that I have a higher minimum level of the first floor of my home or my business. It is mandating that HVAC systems and things of that sort get put up on high floors, not in the basement, where they're going to flood and get ruined right away. So it's a variety of steps that are very slowly starting to be put in place. But it's those two curses that we've got to figure out a way to get that done because, and I'm confident that we will. I don't want to sound like a pessimist. We will get there. The people that live here like to live here. If you end up having to pay an incremental increase in property tax, sales tax, so you can accumulate some money, which gives you bonding authority to actually start to raise some real money and get some of this done. I think that's a way to go. We'll figure it out.
Thank you. And I appreciate the optimistic note at the end. So I'm going to look at the question submission form, and one of the questions refers back to the base of the future. And it says, is the base of the future proposed for international bases as well as bases in the US? If so, will the fence area be broader for force protection reasons?
If you take a look, that's a really good question. If you take a look at a foreign, a US military installation on foreign soil, it has a different look than a domestic installation. Oftentimes, the government itself of the host nation is friendly to the United States, or we would be there probably. But there are lots of bad actors that would love to do us harm. And an installation is a big fat target, as are the people that are coming and going. So I'm a little more mindful of the security concerns for a foreign installation, than I am of a domestic one. The installations also tend to be smaller, at least in the part that is focused on supporting families and things of that sort. I've got some very large installations overseas, but they tend to be things that need that long runways and things of that sort that are used to host aircraft and need a lot of real estate. So it really depends on the political situation in a given country, in the security situation in that given country, and it's something that is constantly reassessed. And if there is a threat that can be identified to either the American service members, their families, or the installation itself, measures are taken to mitigate that right away. So they have a different look, and I think it's more mindful of a imminent security threat to the installations than what you might find domestically.
Thank you. So our chairman, Wieboldt, has a question he would like to ask.
A little bit formal, but the title of this event was on security and service. So what would you identify as the biggest threat to U.S. national security in the next few years?
Can I name a few, Dennis?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd have to think about it if you made me decide on what's number one. Water insecurity is one. There's a lot of countries on Earth, as the climate changes, that are seeing their drinking water supplies threatened. I'm a human being. I'm going to try to survive. I'm going to try to survive with my family. And if you've got water and I don't, I'm going to come for your water. And that is a threat. That is a threat to international security. That's one. I'd say climate change writ large is a threat to international security. If I have increased desertification, stronger storms, back to drying up of potable water sources, sea level rise. If I live along the coast and I start to lose the Greenland ice sheet and Antarctica starts to melt and the Arctic starts to melt and sea level really goes up, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my home. My town is going to be underwater. So I'm going to have to migrate somewhere. Where do I go? You're always going to have the threat of terror. I think that is going to be with us probably for the rest of our lives. There's a lot of groups and individuals around the world that just hate what we stand for as Americans. Individual liberty, democratic government. They hate it because it threatens them and those that are in power by seizing it and keeping it illegally. So they hate what we stand for. And every time they have an opportunity to punch us in the nose, they will. Wealth inequality, another one, I think that is a great source of global insecurity. As you see the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, that is only going to cause friction among the haves and have-nots. And again, if you have not necessarily money, but if you have a lifestyle that I can't possibly achieve with my meager means, I want your lifestyle. And if I have to come after you to get that lifestyle in an armed way, again, that is a source of global insecurity. I think nationalism is a source of global insecurity, where I'm country A and I'm the best in the world. No, I'm country B and I'm the best in the world. And there's a dearth of international cooperation and collaboration, and instead it's one-upsmanship. I think that is a source of insecurity in the world. So sadly, Dennis, there's no shortage of reasons for global insecurity. And America, like it or not, is in the middle of most of those. We are the greatest force for good that the world has ever seen, but we're not perfect. We screw up from time to time, and people still resent what we stand for: democratic government, equal rights under the law. It's just equal rights for men and women, religious freedom. That just rubs a lot of people in this world the wrong way. And so anytime they can rub our noses in that, they'll give it a shot.
Thank you for all the various aspects that you brought to that question. We have about 5 minutes remaining and one last question. So feel free to answer this for the remainder of your time. And it's, what is the most valuable lesson you learned during your days of service?
Oh my. I think it's that teamwork point I made during my opening remarks. You don't know it all. None of us do. Somebody somewhere is going to have a better idea than you came up with. Listen to what people have to say. Bring teams to bear on a project, and you can move mountains. If it's all about you and you're the only one you're listening to, you're not gonna figure it out. You might here and there, but you're not gonna get it all the time. But teams can always figure out a way to get it done because our life experiences are all different. We come from different parts of the country, different sorts of households, different experiences growing up. They all go together to create a mosaic that together is really powerful. But every individual life experience has shortcomings. If you haven't experienced everything, and who has, right? You are limited by only what you have experienced in your life. So you give it your best shot. You say, well, based on my life experiences, I think we should do this. And it might work, but somebody with a different life experience that perhaps has encountered an identical problem can say, hey, I did that before, and this is what we did, and it worked like a champ. You're only going to get that by embracing a team approach to problem solving, and don't worry about who gets the credit.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to join us and all of your responses. That hour went by so quickly, and I was really, really just engaged with what you had to share with us.
No,
So
it's been my pleasure, Hannah. I enjoyed all the questions and I enjoyed seeing all of you. Good luck to you all.
thank you.
Thanks so much. So we'll now transition to the second portion of our event with Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Luecke, who's a professor of military science at Boston University. Thank you so much for joining us, and Hannah, I'll let you take it on from here.
Yeah. So, I'm going to read a little bit of his background. That way, you're all aware of his accomplishments, and honestly, what a pleasure it is to have him with us. So, Lieutenant Colonel Luecke graduated from University of North Dakota in 2001 and was commissioned as an aviation officer through Army ROTC. He is currently assigned as Professor of Military Science at Boston University. LTC Luecke began his military career in the Army National Guard as an enlisted soldier. After commissioning and completing flight school, he served in the 1st Battalion, 25th Aviation Regiment, 25th Infantry Division at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, and deployed to Iraq as an OH-58D Kiowa Warrior Aero Scout platoon leader. In 2006, LTC Luecke was assigned to A Company 1st Battalion, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment Airborne at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He served as an MH-6M Little Bird platoon leader, company operations officer, and fully mission qualified special operations aviator. In 2009, LTC Luecke assumed command of the United States Army Special Operations Command Flight Detachment at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, flying helicopters and tactical fixed-wing aircraft. In 2011, LTC Luecke was assigned to the Aviation Technology Office and served there for over 7 years as a commander and operations officer. LTC Luecke deployed 18 times to global conflict zones in support of coalition and special operations missions. While deployed, he served as a platoon leader, troop commander, mission commander, Task Force S3, and Special Operations Combined Joint Interagency Task Force J3. He is qualified in 13 different fixed-wing and rotary-wing aircraft and holds FAA airline transport pilot and flight instructor certificates. LTC Luecke graduated from the Army's Command and General Staff College in 2013 and earned a master's degree in aeronautics from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in 2015. LTC Luecke's awards include the Bronze Star Medal with 2 OLC, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal with 2 OLC, the Air Medal with 2 OLC, the Joint Service Commendation Medal, and the Army Commendation Medal with V and 4 OLC. He earned the Master Aviator Badge, the Military Free Fall Parachutist Badge, the Army Parachutist Badge, and the Combat Aviation Badge. LTC Luecke is a native of Cambridge and Salem, Massachusetts. His wife Alona is also a native of Massachusetts, and they have 2 children, Pete and Maya. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning about his extensive experiences. Honestly, when I first read it, my father is a former Marine, and so we're reading, I was like, oh my goodness, parachutist. So I was like, this is crazy. I really appreciate you joining us today and the opportunity to hear from you.
Thank you, Hannah, and thanks, everybody. You have to get a lot of parachute qualifications when you're a bad pilot, so that's why I did all that. No, I appreciate this. This is awesome. Obviously, we all wish we could be in some, I don't know if we were going to normally do this. I'm picturing somewhere like really fancy, like the Harvard Club, and we're all having cocktails and stuff, but I guess this will have to do for the time being. So again, thank you to everybody. I don't know if any of you are in ROTC at the different schools you're in. This is a very impressive crowd right here. I'm kind of awestruck by all of you. I'm going to keep this email distro because, maybe the future mayor of Boston is in this Zoom and I might need to get out of a parking ticket in a few years. So, definitely impressive. You guys are, the fact that you're interested in these things and, you're organizing these types of engagements. I saw the list of speakers you've had previously, very impressive, and obviously following Admiral Quigley, there's sobering, right? So thank you again. Myself, the bio, about half of that is true. I grew up, across the river, and I was just kind of a local knucklehead kid. But I knew, I'm looking at that map behind Dennis there in his Zoom thing, and I was definitely like a map, I was fascinated, right? Like the whole world, and I wanted to go and see all those places, but I didn't want to go there as a tourist and get off the cruise ship and just kind of go, oh, cool, and then get on the cruise ship again. I wanted to, go around the world and experience things, and not be a idle, observer of history, but actually, participate in some way. And that's what I was able to do. So, my father and his brother in the 60s, they decided to drop out of college and join the Army and go to Vietnam. And of course, because they wanted to go to Vietnam, the Army did not send them to Vietnam. And so that probably saved me, because my dad is over 6 feet tall, and tall, lanky infantrymen didn't have a great life expectancy in Vietnam. So, but, I had, when I decided to join the military, no one was more surprised than my dad. And it was kind of like, what are you doing? He was part of the military when it was draft Army, and maybe not the best, but he flew down to Fort Rucker, where the Army flight school is, and he was just, kind of blown away by the type of people who were joining the Army, and the people I got flight school with our instructors, and he was like, I'd invite you to at least check it out. It's been the ultimate reward for me. So that's really all about to you all, and hear what you guys think, what your questions are.
We lost Hannah there for a second, but I think she's recovered.
Can you hear me? Okay, hopefully I'll stay with you. I'm really glad I had other people as co-hosts, because that meeting could have just ended. I'm going to throw the question form back in the chat for those of you who joined us a little bit later on and might not have seen it. Please use that to submit any questions that you have for our current speaker. And in the meantime, I have a few that will get us started. So, relatively few Americans have served in the military, and many have no interaction with service members, leading to what is termed the military-civilian divide. What would you do to promote to support those who serve in the military, and what changes, if any, would you make to the selective service system?
Okay, yeah. The military, serving in the military probably isn't for everybody, and I don't think we're ever going to get to where we have a large number of people doing it. It's just not something a lot of people are either willing to do or capable of doing, or a combination of the two. And I think there is value to it being selective, right? To where, it's not something everyone can do, and it's not a privilege, and it's not something you have to do, and it's not a chore. It's something that a small portion of people, for whatever reason, decide, I want to do this, and who meet their requirements, because, there are requirements. It's not a kind of equal opportunity in that way. There's physical requirements, you can't have certain things in your past and whatever. And I think that's a good thing. Now, the key thing, I think, is that even if you're not going to serve in the military, that you serve in some way. I think that's important. And even in the military, if you decide I want it in the military, about half the cadets in our program don't go on active duty. They go in the National Guard, they go in the reserves, and they can still pursue whatever, whatever degree or whatever kind of industry they want to work in. They can do all of those things. And then they can also serve in the military. And that brings a diversity to the military, not just based on, types of people, but, types of expertise. When we would deploy overseas in far-flung places where we were thousands of miles from, hospitals and things, that we would have surgeons that would go with us. And we had something called the Surgical Resuscitation Team, and they were all reservists. And they worked in hospitals, emergency rooms, in urban areas, but they were reservists part-time. But these guys saw gunshot wounds and fragmentation wounds and all the other things that would happen in combat on a nightly basis. And they didn't bat an eye, because that's what they did all the time. So having that kind of expertise where you don't need it, active duty, you don't have to have those people on active duty, but they're in the reserves, they're in the National Guard, they're members of their community, they're very visible in their community. Everybody kind of knows they're in the Army too, but they do other things. They're lawyers, firemen, cops, surgeons, whatever it is. I think that's great. I think the military, at least since I've been in the military, my father didn't have the same experience, but we have the populations behind us. I've never once ever heard anybody say any kind of negative thing to me because I'm in the military. It's just been 100% the opposite. So I think that's good. And I think kind of the less we're in people's face, kind of the better in a lot of ways. We try to just be quiet professionals, not ask for a lot, and just try to give a lot, and and make everyone proud of us. And I think that's important. So I wouldn't really make any kind of drastic changes. I just think, me as a person, and what I always try to teach the cadets is, you're always on parade. Even when you're not in your uniform, people are just going to look at you and they know you're in, even if it's just ROTC. And then later when you're in the service in some way, they're going to form opinions on the larger Army, the military, whatever, just based on, how you conduct yourself, how you behave in and out of uniform. And I try to kind of remember that myself and encourage others to do the same.
Thank you. Our next question is, in recent decades, there has been growing controversy around the idea of the right to protect. Given your experiences in global conflict zones, do you believe that the role of the United States is to maintain not only its national security, but also peace elsewhere?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. And Admiral Quigley talked about this, about the importance of allies and partnerships, and there's kind of a collective self-defense, and just by maintaining a strong military, maintaining strong alliances, we maintain stability without having to actually apply military force, right? And we do all of these things on a daily basis around the world, where we have partnerships in different countries with different militaries. And we do the same thing on the diplomatic side with our embassies around the world. And it just shows that there is a, strength, in like the pack, right? So we do different militaries. We have partner forces that we do advise, assist, accompany missions with. And then, there are larger scale, kind of very involved multinational exercises that happened all around the world, in the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, in Africa, in Europe. And it's just, a subtle or maybe not so subtle reminder that to people that may wish us harm or who may have, malign intent, that, we work together and we'll stand united if something were to happen. Now, you look at what happened in Bosnia and Kosovo, where we intervened under kind of NATO resolution, and we got involved there militarily, and kind of nobody was happy with it, right? So we're trying to force a wedge between two warring factions. And to one, we weren't doing enough to the other, and to the other, we were, being we were the bullies, and to a lot of people observing, it was like, what is the U.S. doing in here, dropping bombs and doing other things. So that was kind of a lose-lose, right? And I think we have to be very careful when we get involved militarily in a very direct way places. We have to understand that none of those things usually come to conclusion quickly. And you have to have some kind of idea, how is this going to come to a resolution in a non-military way, especially when you're dealing with non-state actors, where it becomes, you can find yourself in places much longer than you intended. And we've all kind of, seen that, right? And the problem, a difficult thing there is when we go in and we form an alliance and say, hey, we're all in on this, and we're going to come in here with our military might, and we're going to partner with you, whether it's with actual, direct action, or with, arms and assistance and intelligence. And then there's a change in political party, we have elections every 4 years, then all of a sudden we go, the old political party wanted to do that, we don't, so we're out of here. And we abandon potentially some allies. And so we have to be really careful about that, because the more times you do that, the more you erode that trust that people might have in us.
And on that note, we're getting some really great questions in on the forum. One person asks, how have your perceptions of the military and the U.S.'s role in the world changed as your experience as someone in the military has grown?
Okay. I think, because so many things I did, I got a glimpse of kind of the whole of government approach to things. When you look at, there's so many solutions to problems, and the military is often just complementary to like the ideal solution, right? And so I think, we're experts in military solutions, so we should always provide, here is a military solution for this problem, but it should definitely be, you always have to keep an eye on the fact that, military solutions aren't always the right way to go. And I think, you have to have mature people who kind of understand that. And as you start moving your way up in the military and you work with people from different walks of life, from the State Department, other places like that, you realize that they're just as patriotic, just as, in fact, they're very intelligent people. And when you work collaboratively on solutions, and you kind of break down the stovepipes and you go, hey, let's all get in a room and let's figure out what's the best way to do this, and acknowledge the fact that, when we work together, and that's both within the US government and then with our partner nations, that's where we find usually the most perfect, solutions. There are no perfect solutions, but we can get close. But to do that, you have to be able to work together, and you can't be too proud. Like in the military, there's the big joke that when we're not at war with another country, we're at war with the Navy, like, the Army and the Navy. We like to have this kind of, it goes back many years, and it's all fun, but that's got to stop when you actually start getting into, serious military operations. You can't have these, you can no longer be wearing your team colors, it's like one team. And that goes to more than just within the military, but working in that, working with the interagency, working with the intelligence community, just being open to all kinds of creative solutions.
Yeah, that's great. On that theme of leadership and, getting everyone in the same room, we have another question here about, as a hierarchical organization, leadership is really important in the military. So what advice would you have for junior officers to, kind of thrive as they go through their training and move on to their service?
I'm big on just being humble. Being able to self-assess is very important. Being open to other people's ideas. I think, there are times in the military when, as a leader, whatever it's, doesn't matter what level you're at, you have to just be able to make a decision. And there's nothing worse than a leader who can't just say, hey, okay, crisis mode, this is what we're doing, right? It's like that joke where everyone's in that lifeboat and they're like, let's form a committee, and it's like, that's not the right time and place, but those instances are very rare. You shouldn't be operating in crisis mode all the time. If you are, you probably got some bad time management skills, right? So as a rule, I always tried to get buy-in from everybody that was part of my team. And even if someone comes to the table and they throw out an idea that's completely ridiculous, you go, oh, okay, great, right? And if everybody feels like, if nothing else, they got to say their piece, and you hear them out and let them talk, and people feel like you have their best interest at heart, they will be much more inclined to follow whatever decision's been made. So I tried to always be very democratic. And that goes beyond, when I was a lieutenant, we're talking about just my little platoon that I was worried about. And then as you move up, kind of your sphere of influence grows larger, and you start to realize, okay, not only do I need to kind of do that and be that kind of person within my own organization, but I need to step outside of my own little bubble all the time. And I need to be aware of everyone who's around me. And, having a network is very important. Of people you can go to, ask questions to, get help from. And so you're not going to have that unless you're comfortable with the fact that you don't have all the answers, and you're not going to be able to solve every problem. You need other people around you to help. So I think that'd be the biggest thing. Just be humble, take people's advice and always ask for it. And try to just be like a genuine and open person, and that'll take you a long way.
For sure. I think that's good advice for, people in training, as well as those of us in student governments. I think I think we can all use that as well.
Yeah, did BU and BC not get along? This is shocking.
I know, it's news to me. Don't talk to the Northeastern people either. I guess we'll move now to a kind of technical question, which I think is pretty interesting. Someone asked, the Army had to pivot in 2001 to a counterinsurgency footing after decades of preparing for symmetrical warfare. What do you think will be the next big threat that the Army will face?
It's funny. Like I've been in the Army 20 years now. I don't think we've ever fought the war we wanted to fight. We are always preparing for something, and then it's like, oh, what is this? And then we end up doing something completely different. So the Army invests in people, right? Like the people are the Army's number one weapon system. Like we don't have F-35s, we don't have aircraft carriers. We rely on the other services for quite a bit, right? For all those kind of capabilities, which are vital. But for the Army, it's like the infantryman, right? It's the person. So I think no matter what foe we might encounter next, wherever that is, and whatever kind of fight that is, whether it's a near peer kind of adversary, or if we're doing counterinsurgency or counterterrorism, I think if you have fit and kind of ethical and good leaders at every level in the Army, from the generals on down to the fire teams and the squads, I think we can be successful against anybody. And so the Army invests a lot of time and effort and energy into developing people for leadership, because that's how the Army is, that's really our greatest asset is our people. So it's a cliche, but in the case of the Army, it's actually true, right? We just got a lot of people, we got a lot of infantry units, and that is how we win, right? It's that whole, fire and maneuver on the battlefield and aggressive action, and everyone kind of having a shared understanding and people taking the initiative. The fog of war is real, where you don't always have someone directing you. Okay, this is what you should be doing right now. You have to have people that are comfortable taking initiative, and people who trust their leaders in very dangerous situations to do what they're asking of them. And the way you do that is you develop people who are respected, and you create that mutual trust to where people will charge into the breach, and do things that are very dangerous, because that's the way you win.
For sure. And we have another question here, as we get into our last few minutes here, looking back home, as Hannah started off, COVID definitely a big topic now, but one that definitely can't be ignored is our political circumstance. Definitely a crazy one, no matter which way you look at it. So how does changing political parties, elections, things like that, how do you think that affects the relationship between the federal government and the military, relying on one another? I know there's some stuff in the news this week about the Defense Authorization Act. So, what does that relationship look like in a very, politically tenuous time?
So again, 20 years in the military, we've had all kinds of presidents in that time. We've had, we've kind of like the thermostat, like a kid with the thermostat, like hot, cold, we've gone to big army, small army, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And, we react, right? We are citizen soldiers first. We don't wear we wear the flag of the nation, not a flag of any kind of political party. And it should always be that way. In fact, we're like forbidden from getting political, while we're in uniform and all that stuff. And you have to have obviously as citizen soldiers, we're all going to have our own personal opinions, but you can never cross the streams on those. That has to be your personal life. And it's not something that you bring to work with you. And that's a good thing. And so, big military, small military, hey, when you got a small military, that means you can be more selective, right? And, you can maintain a higher level of readiness because you don't have to do it with all these massive units and everything. You have smaller units, more selective. You can maintain higher levels of readiness with individuals, right? So there's good and bad to both. And I think, we have to just be mindful of when the economy is in hard times, like we don't generate money, right? We spend money and we're expensive. And if, people are struggling and the economy is struggling, we should take an appetite suppressant and go, hey, we gotta do our part here and not overburden, the taxpayer and everything. And if, then we get smart. Okay, what do we want to invest in? What are those things that are very important? And those get decisions get made and we execute. And that's basically how that goes. So it's very important to maintain the trust of the American people that we never, breach that. And we always just, we always have civilian leadership from the very top, all down through Secretary of Defense, right? And so, that's the way it should be. And it's a good system and it's worked. So.
Yeah. And I guess our last question here on COVID. So, obviously, Mr. Quigley talked a little bit about, what COVID has been like in his work. How do you see the pandemic affecting, security in the future? Maybe Army operations at home and abroad. Do you think that's going to change things significantly, or do you think that might be it might just be a temporary change?
I think this is temporary, but I think if anything, this is going to make us better if there's another one, when there's another one that's more deadly, right? If you got to go through a pandemic, like go through one where there's like a 99% chance that you're going to live, right? But we're learning all these things now that will better prepare us for when this happens, maybe 100 years from now. It's kind of ironic that this program here at BU started in 1919. So right on the tail end of World War I, they stood this up, and that was the last, big global pandemic, right? And so we're here in like our 101st year, and here we are again, having another one. And if you look back at the 1919 flu, and everyone was wearing the masks and doing all those things, and maybe we got complacent. And it's funny because when you look at the 1919 flu, it became very political, just depending on what your view of it was, depending on kind of what camp you were in. And here we are again, 100 years later. Maybe we haven't evolved, I don't know. But, as far as like from a national security perspective, the Army's kind of been able to train through this. Even here at BU with ROTC, we've continued training in person. Obviously, we spend a lot of time protecting, ourselves and, making sure safety of the force is always paramount in anything we do. So the masks and the distancing, but we've been able to keep the trust of the administration here, where they're letting us, drive on with a lot of things we need to do, because they understand, hey, these cadets are going to leave here and they may be in Afghanistan, right? And so the training they get here is important, and they've been very supportive of us, which I'm appreciative of. So I think from a national security perspective, we'll be just fine. I think from a government perspective, I think this has probably made us better. Like, hey, here's all the things that we should have had in place. Like, we should have had a con plan for this. Like, as soon as we saw what was going on in China, we should have done X, Y, and Z before it was too late. And, hopefully, right, next time, and, hopefully it's 100 years from now, but, we're better prepared for it. We shall see, though, right?
Thank you so much. With that, we have come to the end of our evening. I appreciate your time, Lieutenant Colonel Luecke, and just working with myself and Alex to get this all figured out, and for your insightful answers and just sharing your experiences with us.
Yeah, you guys are great. Awesome. And if any of you want to talk, or you need my email, I don't know, Hannah, do you have it? Okay.
I can share that with the participants as well.
I'd be more than happy to follow up with any of you, or if you have questions or anything. I know all the ROTC people at all the schools around here. So if you did have questions about that, obviously, but if you just wanted to shoot the breeze about anything else, I'm here for you. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah,
your face paused and I got scared. With that, I would just like to thank everyone a part of the Boston Intercollegiate Government who has worked to make this possible. And for all of our attendees who this might be your first interaction with us, thank you for joining, and definitely please feel free to let us know if you have recommendations for future events, projects, or want to learn about what we're up to. With that, I will let you go for the rest of your evening.
Thanks, everyone.